Good evening and welcome to Havelpix Horror. I'm Timothy, your guide through the dark corners of the unknown. Tonight I have a story for you, one that was told to me when I was just a child. It's the story of a woman named Phylis who dared to dance with the devil himself. Southern Colorado in the 1960s was a place of wide skies and narrow minds, a place where the wind whispered secrets through the juniper trees and old wives' tales echoed off the walls of small-town bars. It was in one of those bars, dimly lit and soaked with the scent of cheap whiskey and cheaper cigarettes, that Phylis found herself on a Friday night, dressed in her finest, seeking a moment of freedom. She wasn't like the other women in her town. She was fiercely independent, with a will strong enough to challenge the world. In those days, a woman alone in a bar was an anomaly, out of place and out of time. But Phylis didn't care. She needed the music, the dance, the feeling of being alive, even if it meant stepping into a world that wasn't ready for her. Phylis had heard of the La Cantina, the haunted tavern that locals whispered about. It was known for its sticky floors, faded red velvet booths, and the shadows that moved just a little too quickly in the corners of your vision. It was said that the La Cantina could swallow you whole if you let it. But on that night, Phylis was more alive than she had ever felt, the pull of adventure stronger than any fear. The bar was already thick with smoke when she entered, her heels clicking against the wooden floorboards. Her heart raced as she crossed the threshold. She could feel the eyes on her, some curious, some disapproving, but she held her head high, a small smile playing at her lips. She was here to dance, to lose herself in the music, to forget the expectations that weighed down on her like the heat of the Colorado sun. The jukebox in the corner played a slow, sultry tune, and Phylis swayed to the rhythm as she made her way to the bar. The bartender, a wiry old man with a face like a cracked leather boot, nodded at her and slid a glass of whiskey down the counter. "On the house," he murmured, as if acknowledging her courage. She took a sip, feeling the burn of the alcohol steady her nerves. And then she saw him. He was leaning against the wall, half in shadow, half bathed in the golden light of the bar's lone chandelier. A man of dark features with eyes that seemed to pierce through the haze of smoke and straight into her soul. His hair was black as coal, slicked back, and his skin was pale, almost luminescent in the dim light. He was dressed in a crisp black suit, the kind that seemed too fine for a place like this, and he had a smile that could melt glaciers. Phylis felt a shiver run down her spine, an instinctive reaction that she brushed aside as nerves. He was handsome, almost impossibly so, with a charm that radiated from him like heat from a fire. She caught his gaze, and he smiled at her, a smile that was both inviting and unsettling. He crossed the room with an easy grace, the crowd parting for him as if he were royalty. As he approached, Phylis felt her breath hitch in her throat. There was something about him, something magnetic and dangerous that she couldn't quite place. But she was drawn to him, despite the warning bells that clanged in the back of her mind. "May I have this dance?" he asked, his voice smooth as honey, with a hint of something darker beneath. Phylis hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. Sure, why not? They moved to the center of the floor, and as the music changed to a faster tempo, he led her with a confidence that belied his youth. He was a perfect dancer, his movements fluid and precise, guiding her effortlessly through the steps. His hand on her waist was firm but gentle, and his smile never faltered. Yet, as they danced, she felt a creeping unease. His touch was cold, too cold, like ice against her skin. And his eyes, though they sparkled with amusement, held a depth that seemed to swallow the light around them. She could feel something simmering beneath the surface, something dangerous and old, something that didn't belong in a place like this. "You're quite a dancer," she said, trying to shake off the feeling. "Have we met before?" He chuckled softly, a sound that sent a chill down her spine. "Oh, I think we have," he replied, his voice low and intimate. "Or perhaps we were always meant to meet." Phylis frowned, a small crease forming between her brows. "I don't recall." "Doesn't matter," he said with a shrug, his smile widening. "What's important is that we're here now, together." For a moment, she was tempted to lean into him, to lose herself in his embrace. But that instinct, that primal fear, held her back. She could feel the eyes of the patrons on her, and she knew she had already taken a risk by coming here alone. She didn't want to compound that risk by leaving with a man who felt too perfect to be real. As they danced, he continued to talk, his words smooth and easy, filling the air with stories that seemed to entrance her. Yet, the more he spoke, the more Phylis felt that something was off. His stories were too charming, his smile too perfect, his eyes too knowing. And then she saw it, the flicker, a glint of red in his eyes as he laughed, like the reflection of flames in a dark mirror. She pulled back slightly, her heart hammering in her chest. "I think I need to sit down," she said, trying to mask the tremor in her voice. He didn't release her hand. "Come now," he murmured, leaning in closer. "Just one more dance. You don't want to leave yet, do you?" She looked into his eyes, and for a split second she saw something that terrified her, a flash of anger, raw and unchecked. And in that instant, she knew. She knew who, or rather, what he was. Phylis yanked her hand away, taking a step back. "I think I've had enough," she said, her voice firmer now. The man's smile faded, replaced by a look of cold calculation. "Are you sure?" he asked softly. "You might never get another chance like this." "I'm sure," she replied, stepping back toward the bar, her heart pounding in her chest. He tilted his head, studying her with those dark, burning eyes. "Very well," he said quietly. "But remember this, Phylis. You can run, but you cannot hide. Not from me." With that, he turned and walked away, the crowd parting for him once more as he left the bar. She watched him go, her breath coming in shallow gasps. And then, just as he passed through the doorway, she saw it, the briefest glimpse of two small horns peeking through his hair, and a tail that flicked behind him, like a serpent in the night. Phylis stumbled back, her hand gripping the edge of the bar. She could feel the weight of what she had just encountered pressing down on her like 1,000 stones. The devil himself had come to dance with her, and she had turned him down. She didn't remember leaving the bar, didn't remember the walk home. All she knew was that she was shaking, her skin cold despite the summer heat. She knew she had been lucky, but she also knew something else. She had seen something she was not meant to see. And so she made a silent vow, a promise to herself. She would never go to a bar alone again, and she would always be wary of charming strangers with dark features and eyes that held secrets. But even now, years later, as I tell you this story, I can't help but wonder if Phylis's choice really kept her safe. Because once you've seen the devil's face, can you ever really forget it? Or does it haunt you, lurking in the shadows, waiting for another chance to dance? Remember this, the devil is always looking for partners. Be careful who you let lead you across the floor. Thank you for watching another chilling tale on Havelpix Horror. If you enjoyed this video and want more stories to send shivers down your spine, be sure to like, subscribe, and tap the notification bell to be updated as soon as we post new content. Got a spooky encounter or an